If you compare beer with bratwurst,
and cheese with wine,
or even whiskey,
with donuts,
then we think you can pair all of these delicious drinks with
murder,
conspiracies,
missing persons,
and more.
Drink with us as you feed your craving for true crime and creepy stories.
Okay. Perfectly Paired With is here with a new episode. I have no idea what it's about. I just know the location and the season that it's in, which made my choice on the drink very easy. If you have not listened to us, or maybe you've caught a little bit and don't quite know
a little bit slow
what we do consistently, probably the only thing we do consistently outside of my wife's amazing ability to tell a story. We pair a drink with a true crime story or theory or different things like that. We don't fully just stick with murders. We don't fully stick with kidnappings. It could possibly be just a simple theory of conspiracy. And some of those are some of my favorites that we've done. Anyway, check us out if you like this. And I guarantee if you like this episode, you'll like a lot of our others. So, Catherine, by the way, this is Catherine, also known as Katie.
Only known as Katie.
She don't like to be called Catherine, but I'm her husband, so I get the privilege. And I am Jason. Katie, what do we have today?
When most people think of Cape Cod, they picture waves rolling in from the Atlantic Ocean. They imagine the feeling of sand between their toes and the taste of a delicious lobster dinner. Or perhaps they think of the quaint downtown areas full of unique, albeit expensive shops, art galleries, and hip breweries. The air thick and heavy with salt. And just as it is today, Cape Cod was an ideal place to vacation during the 1970s. Families would take to the beaches of Cape Cod Bay, searching for sunshine and relaxation. During the summer of 1974, the picturesque, idyllic nature of this vacation spot was shattered when a young girl, chasing after her dog, discovered something that should have only existed in her nightmares. What would turn out to be the mutilated remains of a woman would remain unidentified for almost 50 years. Only known as the Lady of the Dunes, the investigation into her death and the journey of her identification involves an escaped female prisoner, not one, but two notorious killers, an even more notorious mob boss, and the son of one of my favorite authors, Stephen King, in a true crime tale I don't even think he could think up.
Wow. I'm in. If what I said at the beginning didn't hook you to listen a little bit longer, that should. Correct me if I'm wrong. When I think of Cape Cod, I think of all the scenes and location of that movie with Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd, and I cannot remember the name of it.
No, I like Paul Rudd.
No, the psychiatrist one, where Paul Rudd's character, it's like a true story. He takes advantage of Will Ferrell, who's like a curtain salesman.
Psychiatrist. It's actually a very, very famous true crime podcast series as well, which is one that I listened to ages ago.
The series was based off
like
of the
therapist
podcast.
Or a psychologist. I don't remember if it's set in Cape Cod, but there are a lot of places along the East Coast. I mean, you have Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod. I almost think you're thinking of the Hamptons. I feel like that one was set in the Hamptons. But all of these very luxurious, rich, picturesque, just like
all right,
you and I don't belong there places.
While I'm talking, try and look that up really quick.
Okay.
You might be right. It might be Hamptons. But they're all kind of look similar, like you said. But I swear it's Cape Cod. All right. So you gave me Cape Cod as location, and you gave me summertime as the season. And it was pretty easy for me to pick
Okay, so it's called The Shrink.
The Shrink.
That's
right.
the podcast name as well as I think the TV series.
It is, yeah.
Let's see where it was set.
Made it really easy. When I think of Cape Cod, you think of Massachusetts. Cape Cod is not that far from Boston. Boston has one incredibly famous brewery. Not just one beer, but brewery. And that is Samuel Adams. And they're probably my favorite nationally big.
It's the Hamptons.
Oh, man, I was wrong. But they kind of look the same, right?
They're kind of all the same.
Yeah. There's something based in Cape Cod, and I can't remember
Cape
what it was.
Fear.
Cape
That's what I
Fear.
think you might be thinking about.
I feel like it's not quite a horror movie. It's like,
Okay.
anyway, I think Sam Adams for just like a national treasure type of beer. You know,
Yeah.
you've got the big ones like Budweiser, Coors, and then Sam Adams, maybe not, obviously not quite as big as those two, but they made a name for themselves. And I think there's a reason. I really do enjoy their beers. I enjoy their beers very much so on tap. The bottles are a little bit different. You don't quite get the real flavor of their beer in the bottle, I don't think. And Oktoberfest, hands down, when October comes, I will head to a bar and get Oktoberfest from Samuel Adams. Today we're going with Summer Ale.
Because it's summertime and the story is in the summertime.
Yeah. I would have thought there'd be more popular Boston breweries. And, I might get ripped on this, but I couldn't find any around us.
Okay.
I originally wanted Sam Adams, but I checked around just to see, like, would we be doing a Bostonian, some disservice by going with Sam Adams?
I don't think so.
Or a Massachusettsian. Anyway, we've got a summer ale here, and
I don't think I've ever actually had a summer ale. I've absolutely had their
Boston Lager.
The Boston Lager.
Yeah.
Yep. But I've never had a summer ale. I was going to say Boston Lager, and I was like, I just have Boston on the brain, I think.
Boston on the brain.
It's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's a little thick for a summer.
That's what she said. No,
but it's really yummy.
I like that. That's it's a wheat ale.
Yep.
Our most popular wheat ale from Colorado is Blue Moon, and I like what they've done with this wheat ale more than
tasty.
And I think Blue Moon's just fine, but it's a citrus wheat ale, but it's not like hit you in the face with any fruit.
And that's exactly what I was just thinking. The fruit notes or the citrus notes are very just subtle in terms of changing the flavor, but it doesn't feel like a fake citrus flavor. It's actually quite delicious.
Yeah, it's subtly there in the back
while watching the Sox at Fenway, for sure.
The ale, which is a very tasty flavor, is what is winning over everything in this. It's not the citrus. Whereas I think Blue Moon, I suggest everybody have Blue Moon. It's available nationally, made by Coors. But it's for us. That's like our wheat ale. That's probably what we've had more than anything. The orange, and it is brewed with orange peels. The orange in that it's way more prominent than the citrus in this, and I like this being more like somebody put a couple drops of citrus in this, and
it's
that was
delicious.
Yeah.
Well, a beer called Sam Adams Summer Ale, which is indelibly connected to Boston, Massachusetts.
Is that indelibly?
Well, it's definitely not indebitably. So I think it's indelibly connected to Boston, Massachusetts.
The way you tried to say it the first time just messed me up.
We have to fix it. I'm going to check.
Double check.
Well, a beer called Sam Adams Summer Ale, which is indelibly connected to Boston, Massachusetts, is perfectly paired with a story which takes place just across the bay in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The Race Point Dunes of Providence, Massachusetts, are located near the northern part of Cape Cod. For those who don't know, Cape Cod is the peninsula that extends out of Massachusetts into the Atlantic Ocean. It almost looks like a flexing bicep and arm. Yeah. And if that is what you are picturing, the Race Point Dunes would be located near the knuckles.
Okay.
On July 26th, 1974, a 9-year-old, or in another source, they aged her at being about 12, Sandra Lee followed her dog into the dunes, where she discovered something she at first thought to be a dead deer. But after seeing what she recalled was some sort of headband or hairband, Sandra realized that what she had stumbled upon was actually the remains of a human being. The remains discovered belonged to a woman whom investigators believe to be somewhere between 25 and 35 years old. The body was nude and posed in a way that she almost appeared to be sunbathing on a green blanket lying on her stomach. The corpse showed significant signs of insect activity and was basically infested with maggots. The body had long red hair that was fastened back in a ponytail, and there was pink toenail polish on her toenails.
Do you ever think about the people that find these bodies?
And what it does to them for the rest of their lives?
Yeah. And the PTSD they go through. 9 years old?
9 years old.
Mm-hmm. And he has to come across a maggot, or she has to come across a maggot-infested dead body.
And just wait. Just wait. Now, beneath her face-down head was a pair of Wrangler blue jeans and a blue bandana, almost as though they had served as her pillow. Both hands and one forearm had been completely removed. Her neck was nearly severed, and according to one source, that was the result of severe strangulation. And in the end, her cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma. One side of her head had been completely crushed. Many of her teeth had been removed. Literally, only shards of some teeth remained in the skull.
Jeez.
There were no apparent signs of a struggle at the scene, and it was determined that the time of death would have been somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks before the remains would ultimately be found. During an autopsy, the remnants of a burger and fries were found in her stomach, making investigators believe that she had been out to eat in the area shortly before her murder. Now, due to the angle of the head wound, investigators felt confident that the blunt force trauma was inflicted by a person who had been lying next to the woman.
Oh, so is that a weird angle?
Mm-hmm.
To the point of 1 to 2 weeks before, so they think the body laid there for 1 to 2 weeks, or the body was just dead for 1 to 2 weeks.
The body was just dead 1 to 2 weeks, and then I'm going to get to where they think, or how they think the body got to that location.
I wanted to clear that up as far as a body laying on a beach for 1 to 2 weeks. Boy, it's
like a dune, and it was in the hot sun for a significant amount of time. The photographs, almost one person who was interviewed in this documentary who saw the photographs said that the skin had turned black, and it looked like the blackened peel of a banana.
Oh wow!
And they did have black and white pictures of the corpse.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have said that that's what it
Just
was
to give me a picture of this location. You say dunes.
So a sand bank, but there was also tall grass around, and it's right on the coast.
It's a beach. It's on the coast. It's not like our sand dunes where it's just miles of sand. It's more like a hilly part of the beach.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, due to the lack of blood around where the body was found, investigators also felt confident that the woman had been murdered in a different location and then deposited at the scene. There was also evidence that the remains had been raped after the woman had died. Now, taking into account the theory...
I don't even want to know, like, what signifies that.
I didn't look into that.
Yeah, good.
Taking into account the theory that the remains had been moved to that specific location after her death, what I found very interesting is that there were 2 sets of footprints leading away from the location of the body to a set of tire tracks that started about 50 yards away.
Which would indicate that the body, like, was somewhat freshly laid there.
And
you think
that
about
2
like, all that
individuals
sand, wind, everything like that.
Had to have been involved.
Right.
Yeah.
But even, because too much time goes by, sand's going to get rid of, or wind and sand, blowing wind, or wind blowing sand, is going to get rid of any trace.
I hate that blowing sand.
Oh, man, that sandy wind.
Now, the Race Point Dunes are located in the Cape Cod National Seashore, which is part of the U.S. National Park Service, which meant that all license plates going into this park area would have been recorded. But after following that lead, investigators could not find any sign of this woman arriving, at least alive, into the park. They also were unable to explain how feasibly she could have gotten into that remote location where the remains were found without leaving any sort of traceable identification, because it is like a national park.
Right.
As unidentified remains, the Lady of the Dunes was eventually buried in a back corner of St. Peter's Cemetery in Provincetown, Massachusetts, but they would be exhumed multiple times in order to retrieve evidence such as DNA. The body was exhumed in 1980, in 2000, and then again in 2013.
So the one of the main ways to tell a person was from dental records, and so many teeth missing from her mouth, they weren't able to identify her.
Yep. So there's a few interesting things. Clearly her hands were removed so that she couldn't be fingerprinted.
Right.
But one thing that was pointed out a few times when I was doing this research is that in 1970, this idea about fingerprints wasn't exactly well known like it is today.
Yeah.
So the first kind of thinking that investigators did was that the person who did this had to be somehow involved in criminal proceedings, whether on the side of the law or the side of lawlessness, perhaps somebody in the military or somebody connected to government work, because they knew that they had to remove the fingerprints.
And you're saying fingerprints weren't well known to
the layman didn't know that you could identify somebody using fingerprints.
Yeah, it wasn't known watch what you touch at this time.
And it almost is like they tried to decapitate the Lady of the Dunes to remove the head, and when they couldn't make that happen, that's when they decided to remove her teeth so she couldn't be identified through dental records,
which would another possibility from just that is that it's a weaker person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, or it wasn't planned out. It was a heat of the moment crime.
Or they're
freaking out.
Running out of time.
They got spooked. Somebody came along. Yeah.
Although you're going to take more time removing teeth than the head.
I don't know.
They left some teeth, right?
Shards.
Oh, shards.
But you don't have
to
remove.
Trying to go fast.
They're trying to remove fillings, silverwork, gold teeth that if published to dentists, they might recognize the work.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, her skull remained on the desk of the chief of police in Provincetown as a very macabre paperweight and constant reminder of the case.
That's
simply waiting for new technology to be developed.
Yeah, that's a thing.
It's so
People
weird.
do that.
And I don't know if it was always on the chief's desk or after one of the exhumations, the skull just didn't make it back into the grave, but it would be used later for like facial reconstructions.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. We'll have to ask our brothers if their chiefs have any skulls laying on
Like,
their
no, they just wear
desk.
them on a chain around their neck. That's a chief
Just
I
during
would
ceremonies.
be a police officer for. Now, at first, the investigators were focused on simply identifying who the victim was. And in the mid-1970s, that meant they needed to look through hundreds of books containing reported missing women. And the Lady of the Dunes was not one such woman.
I just couldn't imagine, like,
Flipping page. This looks like our Bastion head.
everything's
this one has
just
red hair.
so much harder. You know, like, anytime I hear anybody complain about, like, our technological age, I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, you don't even know. Like, everything is so much better. So much
Yes.
better. Yeah, the world is the world, and it's always going to be a certain way. But this is a pretty damn good time we're in, where, you know, at this point, we're at a point where AI can probably help our boys in blue, you know, solve some crimes. It'll come to that eventually.
Well, in regards to the tire tracks found, investigators questioned certain vehicle owners in the area, but that means of investigation did not result in any substantial lead. Now, despite not being able to identify the remains, investigators believed they had a good idea as to where they should begin looking for someone who might have gone missing with no one caring enough to report it.
Ah,
So during the 1960s and 70s in downtown Boston, there was an area known as the Combat Zone, and it basically was the adult entertainment district for Boston.
the red light district.
Yes, I like Combat Zone.
That's a bit aggressive.
Now, Boston is just northwest from the Race Point Dunes across the water. Meaning, when I say adult entertainment district, it is where someone would go to find an X-rated theater, adult bookstore, or visit a variety of strip clubs. It was also an area known for prostitution, and many of the sex workers there were underage, which suggests that they were being pimped out, maybe not of their own will, or, as we now refer to it, they were being sex trafficked.
Oof.
Investigators began to wonder if the missing forearm on only one arm was done to remove a tattoo or some other type of branding, which might indicate that the victim was actually a sex worker and indicate even who she kind of was considered property of.
You're right.
Yes.
I didn't say.
Indeed. Usually I am. Yep.
I said, we got. I was saying, yeah, yeah, right. I was agree, and it just didn't come out. It came out. You're right. I mean, right, not you're right. I don't know why I said you're right. I definitely was just saying right because you are right.
Usually. And as time went on and there were no reports of a missing woman from either family members or an employer matching the Lady of the Dunes, investigators were emboldened in their thinking that perhaps she had been killed by someone associated with sex trafficking. But alas, that avenue of investigation led to nothing. Now, 5 years after the discovery of the body, the first facial reconstruction was created. This led to an interesting theory regarding the identity of the Lady of the Dunes. In May of 1973, so before the murder of our victim, a woman named Rory Jean Kessinger broke out of a jail in Plymouth, Massachusetts, with the help of a guard. She, along with members of an organized crime gang, had been arrested for the attempted murder of 2 police officers. And the resemblance between Kessinger and the facial reconstruction of the Lady of the Dunes was pretty remarkable.
Is Kessinger, a.k.a. Rory, I just think of a boy's name when I hear Rory. Is that a girl's name?
I only know Rory Gilmore from the Gilmore Girls, and she was a female. So
That's funny. The only Rory I've ever met, he was a friend in like 4th grade, and he played ice hockey, and I was jealous of him because he played ice hockey.
oh, I was like,
and
what
I
was
wanted
his name?
to. No, I wanted to, and
Oh,
he got to. So Kessinger, is she attractive, or like would people know? Like, oh, that's
well, if she can get I was going to say if she can get a guard to help her, but you can do lots of things not being attractive, and you can get men to help you.
oh yeah.
So maybe, I mean, if she matched the Lady of the Dunes, there's nothing that stands out as like that's a really attractive person. There's also nothing that stands out as that's not an attractive person. Pretty just regular.
Probably wasn't overweight
No,
because
nobody was in
match,
the 1970s.
right. Yeah, to match the bone structure
No, but
to pictures, that's
they matched pretty well.
interesting. Okay.
And investigators considered it a reasonable explanation that after escaping jail, Kessinger could have been killed by members of the crime gang, and then her body could have been dumped in the dunes. Plymouth, Massachusetts is just on the other side of Cape Cod Bay, pretty much due west.
Right. Yeah, that one of the things I thought when you said, like a gang activity for this is it could be, like the body being placed there is kind of weird, and just kind of thought, why would they do that? But if it's gang activity, maybe it is to send a message to somebody else.
Yeah. Now, the Lady of the Dunes was exhumed in 2000 to collect DNA, and then that DNA was added to various missing persons databases. It was also used to compare to Kessinger. Now, initial DNA testing between Kessinger and the Lady of the Dunes was considered inconclusive, but Kessinger would be officially ruled out as the Lady of the Dunes in 2002.
Oh, wait, say that last part again?
So initial testing, which wasn't as advanced,
Yeah.
could only come back as inconclusive. We can't say she is the Lady of the Dunes, but we can't say
Because I got stuck on that,
isn't.
thinking about, like, what does inconclusive mean?
But as of
then,
2002, they're like, nope, the testing has developed enough that we can say these two individuals are not the
are
same.
not the same. Okay.
Correct.
That's what I was stuck on the inconclusive, because
So,
what does that mean? Like,
2002, the
might
Lady
be,
of the
it might not be.
Dunes remains unidentified.
okay, cool.
Now, in addition to considering Kessinger as a
I mean,
possible
not cool.
as a possible explanation for who the Lady of the Dunes was, investigators explored different possibilities for who could have been responsible for her murder. One interesting theory surrounds a very famous mob boss and FBI informant, Whitey Bulger, who, if you remember, made an appearance in one of our MK Ultra episodes as having received LSD while in prison as part of a governmental experiment.
Yes. I
Yes.
was like, I know that name somewhat recently, too. Okay.
Now, outside of MK Ultra, Whitey Bulger was an Irish American who was in charge of the Winter Hill Gang, an organized crime group operating out of the Winter Hill neighborhood in Somerville, Massachusetts.
Oh, man. That's like the serious Sugar Hill Gang.
It stresses me out because they're all such happy names, and then they're just
Like,
not happy people.
yeah. Yeah. When you say Winter Hill, I just think Sugar Hill, and like, oh, wait, these are the real ones.
Yes. Now, Bulger was known to frequent a well-known hotel in Provincetown called the Crown and Anchor. And around the time the Lady of the Dunes was discovered, he had been seen with a woman who resembled the Lady of the Dunes. And Bulger was known to remove the teeth of the people that he killed.
Well.
And what's more, there was a well-known author, maybe not so well-known because they didn't give the name, who grew up in the area, who was very vocal about the fact that they believed they recognized the blanket that the remains were lying on as one having come from the Crown and Anchor.
Weird. When you say well known but not well known because they didn't give the name, is that just your source didn't give the name, or the name. Author was like, I have this to say, but don't use my name?
I'm assuming it didn't give the name, so they wanted to make it more substantial. So like, it's a well-known author, but if we tell you what it is, you're not going to know who they are, so we're not going to.
He's sold like 100 books in Cape Cod.
Yeah,
that's about it. About Cape Cod.
Yep. Now, Whitey Bulger was never officially tied to or charged with the murder of the Lady of the Dunes. And as an aside, he was murdered in prison back in 2018 at the ripe old age of 89. So.
Wow. Murdered at 89.
I know.
I feel
even
bad
if you're a mob boss.
Yeah.
You can't kill an old man.
I feel bad for both people. The guy getting killed and the guy who has to kill. Did we watch something recently where somebody had to kill somebody old, and it was like a mob boss thing?
I think that's something you're watching at 12:30.
No, I swear we did. We might have to pause this so we can have a discussion about this. I swear
Let's have it later.
God. No, hold on one second. Okay, I figured it out. Told her a little more details of what I was thinking. And it actually ends up being your favorite book series.
Not favorite, but one of my favorites.
One of your favorite book series, Strike, I think.
CB Strike.
CB Strike's the books, and then Strike is the series about Cormoran Strike.
Yes.
Yeah, if you haven't checked that out, you should. It's really good. It's written by David Galbraith,
who's actually
a.k.a. J.K. Rowling.
Yes.
The creator of Harry Potter, if you didn't know.
And if you didn't, goodness gracious.
Don't listen to us. But yeah, there's that scene where
it's an old man mob boss.
Like, and senile. Like,
yeah,
he's got to be 89. Talk. Yep. Yeah. And they actually, because I've seen the TV series, I haven't read the books, but you know kind of the history behind this guy.
It's garbage.
And you actually you're okay with him dying. So
yes. But in the book he doesn't die. No, but it did remind me of an old man Whitey Bulger.
Old man Whitey Bulger, and also the fact that actually I don't feel bad for him being murdered.
I know.
So, yeah.
He's not my grandpa. I can't think of him like my grandpa.
He's not your grandpa. He's a murderous mob boss.
Just kind of a piece of crap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although the CIA did do him wrong, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So then in 2000, an incarcerated convicted murderer named Hayden Clark confessed to being the killer of the Lady of the Dunes while he was serving 2 30-year sentences for 2 separate murders. In 1986, Hayden slit the throat of a 6-year-old girl named Michelle Dorr, who had been a friend to his niece.
What the
I know. And then in 1992, he stabbed to death 23-year-old Laura Houtling after she accused him of stealing some tools.
How many years is that between the two?
So 1974 is the Lady of the Dunes.
No.
1986
I mean,
is the 6-year-old girl.
Did, yeah.
So 1986. And then 6 years later, 1992.
Did he not get caught for the 6-year-old?
I guess not at the time.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Why would he? But he stabbed a 6-year-old that was friends with his niece?
It would be an interesting story to look into. We'll have to do it sometime.
Oh my gosh.
Now, to the Boston Globe, Hayden reportedly said, and I quote, "I could have told the police what her name was, but after they beat the shit out of me, I wasn't going to tell them shit. This murder is still unsolved, and what the police are looking for is in my grandfather's garden." End quote.
All right, I'm going to let you.
Now, Hayden had been working in Provincetown between 1971 and 1972. And if you recall, the Lady of the Dunes wasn't murdered until 1974. But Hayden's grandparents did live close to Provincetown, and apparently his grandpa had a garden.
So his grandpa wasn't in an apartment around there?
No. Now, we will never know what he meant when he said things were buried in his grandfather's garden because his confession did not seem to be taken too seriously by investigators.
Why?
Hayden Clark had paranoid schizophrenia.
Oh, of course.
And when he confessed to killing the Lady of the Dunes, he did so to his cellmate because he believed his cellmate was Jesus Christ and he was confessing his sins.
Why would you not? I mean, the man's there.
Looking like
there.
Jesus.
You might as well confess to him.
Now, other things did give investigators pause. For one, Hayden had known or had prior connections to both of his victims.
Huh.
That, to me, wouldn't have immediately made me question the validity of his confession, because without knowing who the Lady of the Dunes was, how could investigators be so confident that he didn't know her or have a prior connection to her? You know what I mean? Like, they're like, no, he killed people in his world already. We don't actually know who this victim was, but we're just going to say he didn't have any prior connection to whoever she was. So I think that's a little...
It's a media type thing. And
nobody knew. They didn't know who she was. So how could they say, oh, Hayden, you didn't have prior connection to the Lady of the Dunes? Because they had no idea who she was or where she came from.
Right. Yeah.
Well, second, for the investigators, Hayden's method of disposing of his victims was by burying their remains, not posing them like had been done to the Lady of the Dunes.
Damn. I want to know more about this Hayden. He obviously buried this 6-year-old.
Well, can I tell you this? I was going to pursue a story on him next until I came across this next notorious killer connected to the Lady of the Dunes, and he's even worse.
Wait, okay, so Hayden had schizophrenia. He says he knows. He eventually confesses to a cellmate, but
nothing is pursued really involving
fucks
Hayden.
It all up.
Yes.
But why not just check the garden? I mean,
maybe they did. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Okay, maybe they did. But I'm telling you, if I heard that, and I'm a family member or a brother or somebody related to Grandpa, and I've got access and I know where that garden is, I'm calling the boys and we're having a dig party.
Digging it up.
I want to know, what does Grandpa have in his garden?
Well, I don't think we'll ever know. Now, there is one additional notorious killer from the area who seems to always come up in connection to the Lady of the Dunes simply because of the geographic region in which he killed. Tony Costa, also known as the Cape Cod Vampire, or the Cape Cod Cannibal, terrorized Cape Cod from 1968 to 1969.
Whoa.
But he had actually been convicted of his crimes in May of 1970.
Okay.
And had committed suicide in his cell in May of 1974. So 2 months before the Lady of the Dunes was even murdered.
Why would this even be?
I have no idea. Because he's so terrifying and bad things are oh, it's the cannibal. Oh, it's the vampire. But there's no way. But he's always mentioned. He was mentioned multiple times. I just think that he killed women.
Maybe he is an actual vampire.
I won't.
You cannot kill me.
Anyway, he's always mentioned. But I think it's ridiculous. But I think it just speaks to how terrifying he was and what impact he has.
I want to know more about that guy for sure.
Well, you're going to because
how do you get a name
I've already started.
What's the vampire name that comes up before? Cape Cod Vampire?
Cape Cod Vampire.
Even the Cape Cod Vampire.
All right. So then, in May of 2010, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, also known as NCMEC, paid to have a scan taken of the victim's skull to create a computer-generated image of what the Lady of the Dunes might have looked like. Now, it wasn't this computer-generated rendering that was seen by horror author Joe Hill, who happens to be the son of Stephen King, who's one of my favorite authors.
Wait, Joel Hill?
He goes by Joe Hill.
Joe Hill. I've heard that name before.
Yes, well, he's the son of Stephen King. And he didn't see the computer-generated rendering. Instead, he had seen a composite sketch of what the Lady of the Dunes would have looked like, wearing a blue bandana. Remember, there was a blue bandana beneath her head when she was found.
Right.
And as Hill watched an anniversary showing of Jaws in 2015, he saw an extra in the film that looked almost identical to the rendering, wearing Wrangler blue jeans and a blue bandana. And in fact, the movie Jaws was filmed just 100 miles from where the Lady of the Dunes was discovered in Martha's Vineyard. And according to co-screenwriter Carl Gottlieb, which is another MK Ultra name.
Yeah, it is.
The scene in question was shot on May 25th, 1974.
Oh my gosh! All right, well, you've said a few things here. First one was maybe it's the way you said it, or it's the way my brain understood it. Martha's Vineyard is here. How?
It's where Jaws was shot.
It's where Jaws was shot.
100 miles.
100 miles away. Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha. And then, what did Gottlieb have to do with Jaws?
He's the co-screenwriter, and he said that the scene that Joe Hill saw, where a woman, an extra, walks off a ferry dressed in Wrangler blue jeans and a blue bandana, looking, and I've seen a screenshot next to the rendering, looking very much like the Lady of the Dunes. Gottlieb, this screenwriter, said that specific scene was shot in May of 1974. So a few months just shy of when the Lady of the Dunes was found.
There's so much going through my head. I'm also like, because Gottlieb is...
Yes, but you just have to ignore that name.
Is it just the name? It's not the actual Gottlieb from...
No. He's just the name of this co-screenwriter.
What's our CIA Gottlieb?
Dr. Gottlieb. He's in charge of the MK Ultra project.
That's all I know him as, Dr. Gottlieb. But as a screenwriter, maybe he does something else.
No, this is a completely different person. But he came out and said whatever
I totally
scene...
thought Dr. Gottlieb maybe But they
No.
were all up in Hollywood trying to change everything.
No.
Anyway.
Whatever scene you saw where you think the Lady of the Dunes is working as an extra was shot just 100 miles away in May of 1974. In fact, the movie Jaws was filmed on Martha's Vineyard, which is just 100 miles from where the Lady of the Dunes was discovered. And according to co-screenwriter Carl Gottlieb, the scene in question, which presumably depicts somebody who looks like the Lady of the Dunes, was shot on May 25th, 1974. So just 2 months before the Lady of the Dunes was discovered.
2 months, 100 miles. Yeah, I mean...
Jeans, bandana... I'm going to post the picture
and they're an extra. Like,
an extra.
Why not stick around if you're not from there or you are from there?
And let me tell you, being an extra is not as hard as you think it is. I was on a trip to Las Vegas with my friends. We went swimming in the hotel we were staying at pool, and they happened to be shooting a scene from Prison Break. And they're like, if you're going to stay here, you're going to be an extra. We didn't have to give names. We just were. So if that is anything like what was happening when they were filming Jaws, you might not even know who that extra was.
If you are a runaway prostitute, why not be an extra on a film that comes around?
Why not?
You see some sort of flyer or something, like Hollywood movie being filmed at Cape Cod. If you want to be an extra, apply here.
But I will post the two next to each other, and it's eerie how much they look alike.
You're between Johns, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'll apply for this really quick.
But
and they write back and say, hey, we want you to come. Or it's probably more of a
you're just
show
there.
Up. Show up.
You just show up. You're wearing jeans. You're wearing your bandana.
She's between Johns, and she takes her pen out of her purse and writes it on her hand. Like, this date, at this time, at this place.
Wow.
And she goes and becomes an extra. And she's not some big badass like gang bitch.
Well, she's definitely not Rory Kessinger.
Yeah. Was that mafia that Kessinger was involved in?
They
or
said it was
just
a crime gang.
Crime gang.
Which I didn't think was happening in the 70s.
Especially,
but I guess
in the 70s. Like, hey, go Rory. You women's rights right there. Like, you're just proving we could do what they do.
Well,
although she did escape.
And we don't know where she went.
She may have done it better.
Rory.
She might have done everything better than the men.
Probably.
Man.
But even that lead, with the weight of an actual well-known author, Joe Hill, did not lead to the identification of the remains known as the Lady of the Dunes.
Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, huh?
Yeah.
I
think they've written books together.
I think I've read a Joe Hill book. And
Interesting.
I don't know what book it is, but I swear to God, I have read one.
Well, I'm sure he would like to hear that.
I'll never get a chance to tell him. So.
And the identity of the Lady of the Dunes would go on to continue to be a mystery. That is, until October of 2022, when genetic genealogy would give the Lady of the Dunes her name back.
Huh. Oh, man.
Ruth Marie Terry was born in 1936 in Tennessee.
In Tennessee?
Yes. After a brief marriage to one of her husbands, how many she has, I'm not sure, to one of them.
So at least one.
Yes. Well, at least two.
Oh.
Terry moved to Michigan in 1957 and began working at an automotive plant. It was in Michigan that she gave birth to a son.
From Tennessee to Michigan?
Yes.
Okay.
After having probably not a great marriage in Tennessee.
Oh, so she was married in Tennessee, got divorced,
moves to Michigan. In Michigan, she gives birth to a son who would be adopted by her superintendent.
What the?
Because Terry really didn't have the means to care for her child. Then in February of 1974, Terry met and married an antiques dealer from Reno, Nevada, Guy Rockwell Moldovan, a.k.a. Raul Guy Rockwell, a.k.a. Guy Moldovan Rockwell, who I'm just going to call Moldovan.
If she laughed because she's looking at my face as she says all these names, what?
Aliases.
Tell
it's
us
just
about
indicative
Raul.
of the kind of life that Moldovan lived.
Yeah. And he's probably like an antique dealer with quotations around it.
If you don't like him right now, you are going to absolutely hate him in the next 7 minutes. He was born October 27th of 1923. And when the couple married, Terry herself, so this is the Lady of the Dunes, I'm going to call her Terry, which is her last name, actually provided a different name for the purpose of getting married, which wasn't that unusual for her because she, just like Moldovan, had several aliases. So life was looking up for Terry.
All right, Terry.
Now, after getting married, the couple visited some of Terry's family members, and they told them that they were planning to take a trip across the United States to hunt for antiques. Now, when Moldovan, so Terry's husband, visited family again later that summer, he was alone. And his explanation was that Terry was missing. So Terry's brother...
Why are you alone? My wife is missing.
So Terry's brother hired a private investigator. And this PI concluded that Terry had run away and joined a religious cult. Which
here we go.
I think if I could just be a PI and that's what you... Oh, I'm sorry. Your loved one joined a cult. $500. Thank you very much.
That would be my answer to everything. Everybody's joining cults now. I'm sorry.
Now...
I looked really hard. And you're just on your couch eating Cheetos all day, watching reruns
and you're eating Cheetos
because
your kids refuse to eat them in the mixed bag of chips. Now, had investigators been able to identify Terry as the Lady of the Dunes, it would have been only a matter of time for them to narrow in on Moldovan as a possible suspect.
Really?
You see, his history is rather suspicious, which
You
perhaps explains why the identifying features of the Lady of the Dunes were removed, ensuring that she would remain unidentified. So,
All right.
during
Let's hear.
during his first marriage, Moldovan worked for a time as a short order cook at a restaurant owned by his wife's parents in Eureka, California. It was while working there in 1950 that Moldovan would become the prime suspect in the double murder of Henry Baird, who is a bread truck driver, and his girlfriend, Barbara Kelly, who was a waitress at the same restaurant where Moldovan worked. Baird's remains were found naked with a gunshot wound to the back of his head, and Kelly's body was never discovered.
Damn.
And despite being a prime suspect, Moldovan was never charged, and he and his first wife eventually would wind up moving to Seattle, where he worked as a disc jockey.
Could you imagine being the first wife? Just like you're the prime suspect of a double murder. And like, I'm sure, come on, you're prime suspect. And all these years later, they're still saying it.
Well, maybe that's why that marriage ended in divorce in 1956.
So not far after.
Now,
she was like, I'm going to fucking die if I stay in this marriage.
Just wait. Next, Moldovan married a woman named Manzanita Ryan. And with this marriage, Moldovan became a stepfather to Manzanita's daughter. Both Manzanita and her daughter would disappear in 1960. And after their disappearance, that's you.
I remember you can't hear it.
You can.
No, I know, but on the recording.
I think you can.
Yeah?
Let's go back.
Let's go back and see. Just so everybody knows. We
'Cause-
both heard a ding in our headphone, which means it came from
see.
our phones, but I don't think it records.
And after their disappearance, Moldovan would flee Seattle and remain on the run until he was apprehended by the FBI, wanted in connection to his missing family members. In fact, dismembered human body parts were discovered in the Moldovan family's septic tank, but since the remains could not be conclusively proven to belong to Manzanita or her daughter, Moldovan was never charged.
What?
Yes. So clearly, if you were going to commit murder, it needed to be done during like the 1950s and 60s when technology just sucked.
I wonder how many
People got away with.
how many like murdered people are there that they just don't even know about?
Yeah.
Like just people that, it was way more common to have like, less family too, because, healthcare wasn't as good. So parents could die a lot earlier. And then, the runaway children, they have like zero ability to stay in contact with their children because you just have these landlines and everybody just has one. And everybody has 3 channels on their
See, and I was thinking about the
TVs.
fact that you could have body parts floating around in your septic tank, but since they couldn't be tied to any specific missing family member, they were just like, okay, thanks, have a good life, Moldovan. Like, that's crazy to me.
Oh, yeah, I never really thought about
They're
that.
like, oh, it's an arm. We don't know if it's his wife's or his stepdaughter's, so can't charge him.
Well, I think
It's
the
crazy.
main thing is that they can't charge him because they can't prove that he put them there. Could have been the person before him, or it could have been his neighbor,
That's
or
ridiculous.
it could have been
Now,
whoever. But he definitely had to dig to get that septic tank
I don't know,
entrance.
you're a prime suspect in a double murder less than 10 years earlier. Your wife and stepdaughter go missing. You have body parts floating around in your septic tank. And
they find them.
yes.
Super
Now,
weird.
Moldovan would go on to marry again. And this time he would be charged with swindling his wife's family out of $10,000, which with inflation today would be worth over $100,000.
Swindling.
Yeah.
That's a good word for
I don't know if it's a legal word, but
coaxing
he
money
basically,
out of somebody.
yeah, finessed.
Yeah, finessed.
Now, Moldovan would receive a suspended sentence for that crime, the swindling, after he agreed to repay the amount taken. Now, before becoming the Lady of the Dunes, Ruth Marie Terry became Moldovan's fourth wife.
Okay, and at this point, we're at crimes in 4 different states now, or 3?
Oh, dang.
Or
yeah.
potential crimes, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I guess these arms and legs and your septum system aren't actually belonging to you, so we'll let you go. Yeah, we're like 3 to 4 states.
Yes.
Now. He's doing different things.
Yes.
Which back then there's not a good systematic way to connect.
To track. Correct.
Gosh, could you imagine that part too? Like how perfect it is for criminals, serial killers.
It's a wonder anybody ever got
Go
caught.
to another state. You're like in another country.
Yeah. That was the gorilla killer, remember? Just killing all over the United States.
Yep.
Has to go to Canada where the Mounties finally are just like, we will not handle you being here killing our people.
We will not. We are Canadians from Sweden, but
I don't know, but he got
we're
away
still
with
just as strict as the
a
other
ton in the United
Mounties.
States. Doo-doo-doo. And then he goes to Canada and they're like, no.
We will not. Yeah, how do you do the French?
What is a
You almost said
Canadian?
it. It's French. Like for the
French
Mounties, because it's what
Canadian.
Montreal is kind of where those and that's kind of a lot of French, I think.
Yeah.
We will not.
No,
now
that's
you got
not
me
even.
messed up.
Okay.
You got me messed up.
So,
All right.
the Lady of the
We
Dunes,
tried to be funny. We failed miserably on that.
Ruth Marie Terry, then became Moldovan's fourth wife, but not his final wife.
Oh, jeez.
So after her death, Moldovan would eventually move to a small town near Salinas, California in 1976, where he remarried. And after retiring in 1985, he spent his free time hosting a late-night local radio show.
Oh, wow. He became a DJ.
Well, he was a DJ for a little while when he was married to his first wife.
Oh, that's right. That's crazy.
Yeah. Married 5 times.
What year is this now?
76 is when he moved to Salinas, and then he retired in 85.
My grandpa was a
That's who I thought about this
DJ.
whole time.
Yeah. He had an amazing voice too. Perfect for it. And called Nuggets games. Called the what was our professional hockey team, but not part of the NHL at the time. The oh shoot, I got a hat with the symbol on it. Colorado something. Jeez Louise. Anyway,
We should add bird sounds in honor
Yeah.
of Grandpa Gene to this episode because he played those while he was doing like morning
that's right.
radio.
Yeah,
nests.
yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, when I
freaked a
think
lady out. Thought she had a bird in her engine that one time, remember?
that's right.
She like pulled over trying to find the bird.
Yeah,
It's
he
coming from
tricked-
the radio.
His station tricked a lady to make her actually think she had birds in her engine or something. And she was like, every morning I hear this bird sound. And then she figured it out. It was Grandpa Gene's
She didn't call him Grandpa
show.
Gene.
Yeah, I was going to call him that because, not going to call him his real name. But yeah, so it was during the same times. I just think of like what it takes to be a DJ at the time. Now, he was a DJ for a long time. It wasn't his only job. He had tons of jobs.
Are you talking about Moldovan or Grandpa Gene?
Moldovan, like what? Yeah, the fact that he kind of like dabbled a little bit, and then later in life,
I see him
he
as such like a
becomes-
slimy.
Oh,
dude
he's
who's
a con
just-
artist.
yeah,
He's a con
agreed.
artist, but apparently also a murderer.
Yes, many times over murderer.
Is it too early for me to ask you if Terry, right?
The Lady of the Dunes.
If she was in Jaws?
Nobody could figure it out. Nobody knows.
I bet she is. I bet she is.
I'm not sure. I think we could figure it out. I actually even thought about going back to figure when they went to visit family before heading out on the road. And I don't know if I could figure that out.
But even then, what if what if there's just a sign like,
maybe she
filming
was.
a movie at this beach. If you want to be an extra, just come. And they just were like, hey, let's make a stop.
Yeah.
This could be fun.
But also, I think during this time, her look was very common. I mean, you had Rory Kessinger, who looked a lot like her. The extra, who looked a lot like her.
The clothes being the
all
same.
All of Charles Manson's family members, who looked a lot like her.
Yeah. But it's the clothes being
jeans
the same.
and a bandana. You know what I mean?
Clothes colors.
Well,
I got to see the pictures.
I'll post them.
We'll post them on Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll definitely post them on Instagram.
Now, investigators officially closed the case of the Lady of the Dunes, concluding that it was Moldovan who murdered her. But there are so many questions that just remain unanswered. And as Moldovan had died at his home in 2002, having made it to the age of 78, those questions most likely will never, ever be answered.
When did the DNA, when was that confirmed as Terry?
2022.
Holy
October
cow.
of 2022.
2 years ago.
Yes. Now, here's something that if this story just wasn't the most amazing story you've ever heard, this will do it. So 2 years after Terry's death, so the Lady of the Dunes body was discovered. 2 years after that point in time, Moldovan published a book called Cooking with Rump Oil. And in it was a recipe called Cape Cod Shid. Next to the written recipe was a drawing of a creature with long flowing hair. And here, according to Moldovan, is how to make the Cape Cod Shid. And I'm quoting.
Is that S-H-I-D?
S-H-I-D. Quote, out of the water and into the pan, the only way to cook the shid. After the shid is caught, anything over 5 minutes ends it. The sweet turpentine taste will turn to that of a burnt glove, and the tender look will become one of despair. Remember, just 5 minutes. Don't cook the shid out of it. End quote.
What the fuck?
Cape Cod Shid.
Is there ingredients to this recipe?
No, that's it. I think it's like a weird cookbook poetry mashup. But Cape Cod Shid. And for me, what sticks out is shid spelled backwards is dish. And during this time period, like an attractive young
was known as a dish.
Is a dish. And actually, Terry's family recalled that he seemed incredibly possessive of her. And so my mind automatically goes to, I wonder if they were out eating some hamburger and french fries, which was in her stomach. And maybe some other guy made a comment that she was a dish. And this just kind of like marinated in Moldovan's head. And so later that night, maybe she even mentioned it, like, you're married to a dish. And he just, the murderer he was like, I don't really like your tone. And that's what I think of.
Do you think he took a hand and half an arm and a hand to cook?
No,
tried it?
I don't think he ate it. I think he was just trying not to have her identified because it would come back to him.
And maybe that was his way to confess because in his older age.
No, this was just 2 years after.
Oh, 2 years after? All right.
Which I don't know if I can get my hands on this book, but I wonder if there's something about limbs floating around in a septic tank, like ex-wife stew or something, to his wife and stepdaughter's deaths. And then also like the bread truck driver and his girlfriend. Is there another recipe? You know what I mean? Like if it was like a confessional book.
Oh, we got to get that book. It has to be around somewhere on the internet, I'm sure. 'Cause
Well, you find things on...
You were able to.
So I'm actually going to post
it.
No, I have a screenshot of it with the drawing of this creature.
Somebody was able to post that and or quote it in their in their storytelling of this. That's. Oh man, I'm processing it right now. That is one of the craziest ways we've ended a podcast.
Well, we're not done. I have my whole outro. I just think this is literally one of the most bizarre stories
But that's the end of the story, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you got.
I've ever been exposed to.
This is a strange story.
And the fact that he got away with at least 5 murders that I can confidently say he probably did. And he just got to live out his life doing his stupid radio show.
I like to also believe that the tie to Jaws is actually a real thing too. And that Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, had it right. Like, who the fuck? Like, that's crazy.
I've got that picture. We will post it.
That's crazy that he would. I mean, I think they're from there because Stephen King bases most his fake towns. I believe it's the Cape Cod area. I think I've seen a map where you see the fake towns and it is like Cape Cod. Geez. If I'm saying that and it ends up being fucked in the Hamptons,
I don't know. I think it's
Cape
like the
Cod.
New England area, though. Like I do think
it's
there's
the
a
New
connection
England area
between Stephen King and New England.
Yeah,
the New
and
England region, which is a lot of that area.
But for him to be just watching a movie and like an extra in a scene, being like, "Oh shit, that looks like."
Yeah.
I think he has growing up roots in the area, and so that story of
the Lady of the Dunes.
There we go. I was like, the Dunes lady, the Lady of the Dunes.
Dunes. No, what is that movie that you want me to watch? Doom. No, Dune.
Dune.
Doon. It's a different Dune.
Will everybody please message us and tell Katie to watch
I'm
Dune.
not going to do it.
And Dune 2 especially. The book, just listen to the book.
No, thank you.
I'll send you the book and you'll know you need to.
No, thank you.
So I would imagine, his ties there, he maybe became obsessed with the case.
Yeah, a little bit, probably.
Especially as a writer. As a writer, he was like, how can I use this in one of my books too?
Yeah.
Boy, what an eye to just like be combing a movie. And
I have a side-by-side shot that we'll also post of this extra and what the
I'm excited to see
Ruth Marie Terry look like.
I'm excited to see that. Good story.
Now, I don't think it's unreasonable to conclude that Ruth Mary Terry had a difficult life. I also feel confident in writing that Moldovan most likely wasn't honest with his new bride about his connection to not one, but most likely 2 dead pairs of people. So when she headed out on a honeymoon trip across the United States in search of antiques with her new husband, she probably was thinking that things were going to change for her for the better, which makes what happened to her all the more tragic when you consider it was her new husband lying next to her who decided to smash one side of her head in. And then in choosing himself over even giving her the dignity of an identity, he decided to remove both hands, attempted to remove her head, and when that failed, pulled the teeth from her mouth. And with so much unknown about exactly how or why, one line of Moldovan's recipe, Cape Cod shed, might be the only detail about what happened to the Lady of the Dunes that we will get from him, especially when you recall one source citing strangulation. Quote, after the shit is caught, anything over 5 minutes ends it. The sweet turpentine taste will turn to that of a burnt glove, and the tender look will become one of despair. End quote.